Hello everyone. So as you know, there is a big talk around Donald Trump increasing the H-1B visa cost from $1,000 to $100. And all of us know that from an Indian immigrant perspective, that can have issue as far as employment in the US is concerned. Of course, that doesn't apply to people who are already employed. But from an IT company's perspective, for people the company wants to send to the US for employment, obviously they can be second thoughts. Why? Because $1,000 translates to 88,000 rupees with the current forex rate, and 100,000 translates to 88 lakhs. That's quite some amount of money, right? We should understand what can be the impact of that, but before that, let's look at the numbers. US workforce in total, right, in the IT, or let's take the total workforce, is 170 million people as compared to 600 million people in India. Out of 170 million people, 71 million people are in IT and IT-related jobs in the US. And India last year has issued 200,000 or 2 lakh visas to the US. And the year prior, which is 2023, India has issued 1,90,000. So of course, there has been a 10%, roughly about 10% increase in the number of people who've gone to the US. Will that change? Of course, that will change, because the number of people who've gone to the US for IT and IT-related jobs has been on the rise, and with this, that can have an impact. But will that be a very catastrophic change? No, I don't think so, because this would have been a big hit to India if we were looking at India 20 years behind. But from what we are from the year 2000, 2005 to 2025, things have obviously changed. So is there a reason to actually worry? No, not really. We have to be looking at it from a futuristic perspective. There definitely can be a 10% hit in the sense that if last year 2,03,000 visas exactly to be were issued to the US, maybe that can drastically come down to maybe $1,80,000 rupees. Of course, that may hit income levels of people, aspirational levels of people who were looking at higher salaries and better standard of living for their families. Of course, that can be an impact. But will that be a long-term impact? No. I see this as an impact probably for the next 1 year and not beyond that, because the numbers are not against India or not in the favor of US, because US as such, as an economy, is reeling in debt. And let me define gross domestic product, or GDP, for you. GDP is the sum total of revenues that an economy earns from different aspects or different industries or different sectors in an entire financial year. So that's gross domestic product for you, GDP. So if we have to look at the US GDP, 2024 GDP levels were $28 trillion. And the debt, as on September 5th, right, is $37 trillion, which is 123% over and above their income. So GDP is nothing but income, the total income, and the debt is 120% way above that. So if you and I have to understand it from an Indian perspective, if say for example I have a 15 lakh income per year, what if I have a 35 lakh debt to serve, right, to service? That's a huge amount of money. And today what is happening is that US, with all the tariffs tantrums, has made it all the more difficult for countries to do business with them. And that is obviously showing. And why is all that happening now? Why now is the million-dollar question. US currently has 9.2 trillion worth debt, which was supposed to be serviced, in the sense that debt that matured in June and July, which again they have rolled over, which means they've bought time, to kind of pay that debt. Out of which 1.6 trillion was kind of paid, but that's not good enough. Now the U.S. administration talks about a lot of money coming into the U.S., but that's yet to be seen. The numbers don't, kind of relate to that. Added to that, they have a 1.6 trillion as part of their budgetary deficit, which makes it about 10.6 trillion in terms of debt. So, if 33% of a country's debt needs to be paid just in this period till November alone, now we can connect the dots. That's precisely why US is actually coming up with things like this, including increasing the H-1B tariffs or H-1B visa cost. And the tariff tantrums were again as a part of raising more money so that that money can be paid. And mind you, out of the debt, $37 trillion debt, 85%, roughly 85% has to be paid to China and many other countries. So that's a very bad scenario, right? And that puts a big pressure on the dollar, and US bond yields have actually gone up to 4 to 5%, and that's not a good thing at all. So we have to be reading it from a very factual perspective rather than getting consumed by the numbers. Now, from an Indian standpoint, keeping all this in perspective, the government of India has also cut down on GST. In many cases, the GST at 28% and 18% have become 12%, and 12% have become 5%, which is a great thing. That is actually putting a big, that is actually pushing India positively by a huge margin. And today, the Prime Minister of India has also mentioned about the GST coming in force from tomorrow. That's a great thing because these are structural reforms which will actually push India's consumption growth story. So, as somebody who manages money and somebody who kind of manages money for not just for Indians, for many non-resident Indians, and of course, as at Capricorn Mind Fame, we also advise global citizens today through the Gift City and multiple other offerings. I can very proudly tell you that there is a big change that's happening because of the tariff changes that we've seen with the US and India, as well as the issues that may crop up because of the H-1B visas. So what will change? A lot of talent that was seeking US could probably look at India and other economies, where there could be that kind of talent. But unfortunately, outside of India, US was the most preferred market for many IT professionals. So that's not happening. They're not going to other countries, maybe less, 10% of the population who initially went to the US now may want to go into the other countries. But the balance will obviously look at better employment opportunities in India, which will pave way for the next level of growth, not just in manufacturing, which we've kind of seeing for the last few years, but an IT revolution also can happen, though it may take a little time, at least a decade. But US has actually, kind of nailed its own coffin, at least to begin with this kind of reform, because that's not helping the US. So, long story short, I think as investors, one should be looking at within the portfolios in the short term. I don't see the IT funds or digital funds kind of performing for investors in the short term, unless one wants to take a longer bet through systematic investment plans. But otherwise, investing too much into IT and IT related businesses just because Infosys or Wipro is kind of cheap by 4%, 5%, maybe even 10% in the next few weeks to come is not helping. So, but innovation is not entirely IT based, though it's a little IT based though. Innovation is definitely a good growth story and an area where investors should be looking at. So, So I think in all, those short term in IT and IT looks weak, especially for people who want to go to the US. Income levels can be hit and multiple things, and that's a 1 year short kind of thing. But in the long term, things look great. I think that's a comfort. All the best to all of you. Thank you.